the Fill the Funnel podcast with Jeff Swan
and Tom Slocum.
We're here to help you crush your targets
with tactical tips and insights you can act on today.
Don't have a fancy tech stack, a big budget, or even a huge team to lean on?
Well, it's time to get that solved today with FTF Fridays.
Hey everyone, welcome to Fill the Funnel Fridays with your hosts Jeff Swan and Tom Slocum. Today we are going to be talking about, well, you've probably seen it all over the place, is people touting or complaining about hustle culture in sales. So the critics say that hustle culture breeds a lot of burnout and annoying people and whatever you want to call it. On the other side, you have people who believe that hustle culture is the reason why they're so successful, and just putting in that extra work is the reason why they hit their targets and live a good life. So Tom and I wanted to talk to you about how you can actually leverage hustle culture intelligently. And instead of canceling it altogether and saying it's not good, we want to explore actually how you can use it to your benefit and get results from hustle culture. So with that said, Tom, can you tell our listeners what is hustle culture?
Yeah. So, a hustler is really just somebody that kicks ass. Right. End of the day, they'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. They work harder than many people. They are up hours after hours doing more than some others. And in this hustle culture, we've always been breeded that that's the way to succeed in sales. You had managers on top of you. If you took a day off, it was the worst thing ever. You didn't have it in you. You were one of the weak ones, and so it was always just this grinding mentality and always doing more, to where sometimes you just drove yourself into the ground and couldn't give yourself that time to really, calm down, be patient. It was just always this hustler. These hustlers, they want to constantly have this need to improve. They do some of the jobs that really no one else will do. They really never make excuses. And they just go. They're like the Energized Bunny, in a commercial. They're just always going with a battery on their back. And so I love this topic because is it really healthy? And what are the pros and cons to that? And how do we learn to balance that to where we are hustling, right, with clear, precise goals, not aspirations, and really align with, being that go-getter, but also, being okay to take a minute.
Right. Yeah. Well, and on that, like, one of the things that really caught my attention with what you're saying is the fact that you want to avoid burnout. Right. So one of the things about hustling, and this isn't exclusive to sales, this is sales, entrepreneurship, marketing, freaking working out, whatever. If you do things too much, too long, with too much intensity, you end up burning out, no matter how good it is. Right. Like, we had a big competition in March that was huge. People loved it. There was so much energy and so much participation and so much value. People did things they'd never done before, right? But what happened is that a lot of the energy that we had, we couldn't maintain that energy forever. You can't maintain that energy forever because it just burns you right out. So you really, as human beings, you need to understand your limits and really go after, like, what am I able to do at a consistent pace without burning out, and then knowing when to walk away. A great analogy of this is, I don't know how much you understand about speakers, but speakers kind of have two power ratings. So, when you crank a speaker up, sometimes you hear that popping and crackling, right? Yeah. So it's because there's two types of wattage, they call it. So the maximum watt is the max it can go up for a short period of time, and it's safe. You're not going to blow the speaker. You can just hear it loud for a little bit, and that's good. RMS, I can't remember what RMS stands for, is kind of like the point where the maximum power you can have consistently without blowing the speaker. So typically that's about half of the rating of the max wattage is the RMS. So when you're thinking about yourself, is that a lot of us in hustle culture live in that max volume level and don't understand why we just don't have the volume anymore to do our job. And so it's really understanding the difference. What is my pace that I can do on a day to day? And then how can I crank it up when I need to and then pop back down?
No, and there's so many different ways to, it isn't having to go 100% of the time. There are levels to it. There is opportunity to scale yourself. You look at some in the sports world, right? When you learn to get better and hone in your sales process, it's just like an athlete in basketball. You look at LeBron James and some of the greats, they know when to turn it up and when to be able to pace themselves through the game. Not every single play has to be mastered. Where you look at the younger guys coming into the league, they play hard at every single play. They have a chip on their shoulder, something to prove, and they can't let off that gas. But as you master your process, you start to learn yourself, you learn your strengths, then you get to have this really fun life where you get to hustle when you want. And you can control that, right? And okay, this month I have big goals, I need to crank it up. Okay, this month I can, scale back a little bit. You can master those levels and give that output accordingly based on different factors.
Yeah, no doubt. It's so true. Like I think we even talked about it on Fill the Funnel like a few weeks back, but how I used to be the young go-getter on my hockey team, and then the old guys would actually just beat me with very little effort, and then now I'm the old guy on the court. But it's amazing when you start to hone your craft. But I guess when you really think about it, why do you think, like, I'm curious, why do you think people are so against? There seems to be like a moral challenge against hustle culture. Why do you think it's come from like a wellness conversation to like an ethical conversation?
Well, because I guess the science, right? I haven't dove into a lot of it, but it's toxic. It shows that the longer, so hustle culture is where you believe that, you're relentless and continuously working hard at all times. Whether you're in a coffee shop, you're on vacation, you're home, you're always doing something and working. And so those longer hours can lead to an increase of anxiety and depression. Right. And
Right.
Given that, last month was really focused on mental health, and talking about this right now is kind of come in the forefront. Those things matter. Right. And so hustle culture is technically costing you sleep, which is causing you to have lower performance levels. And it creates this anxiety in the modern day for you and creates this depression. So then you start running out low on yourself. I've ran into this multiple times in my career. I felt it. I know that I needed to take the time. And as soon as I sat down and gave myself that space, my body crashed on me hard, right? Like everything broke for like 2-3 days, just a wreck. And you just go through, this fog for a couple of days, and you're just not performing your best. You're making mistakes. So that's why I think it's not so much an ethical thing of because there's plus sides to the hustle culture. There truly is. But the cons that really people try to focus on is the mental side of it, and how it just runs you into the ground, and you're not giving yourself the proper care. So you're not going to perform 100% of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what I think the critics are talking about when they talk about it becomes ethics is that traditionally, sales leadership has leveraged a person's willingness to hustle to kind of burn them out. To like if you look at the average turnover of an SDR, I mean, it's very common to see SDR teams with 50% turnover, even up to 100% turnover in a year. So it's like there's an expectation that these young people are going to come in and work their butts off, quite literally, and then just leave the job when they're tired. And so
you're milking the cow, right? But that's what a farmer does is they'll milk the heck out of the cow until it can't be milked no more, right? And then they just kick it off. And so that's what tends to happen in some of these cultures, and especially in a sales development role, is you just turn into a cash cow until the cash can't come in anymore. Before it's too late. And so tenure on a sales development team is like 12 months or less. And it's crazy. And that's why they tend to want to go the AE route, because yes, is it stressful? but it's a little bit more different stress. So maybe they feel relief, right? If they can progress up or get into that management role, and just not be a cog in a machine constantly being pumped for every last week of the month. Hey, I need you to get more meetings. Hey, I need you to get more meetings. Hey, I need you to step up and grab 10 more. It's like, okay, you're telling me this every month, and I need to care for myself and take myself out of that, right, and do what's best for me.
Yeah, you know what? It's you telling me that makes me think of an SDR that I was mentoring, where she was having challenges with that. It was like this mental battle every month of like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if I can do the same thing every day and never kind of be done.
Mm-hmm.
Like to never be done, because you're booking meetings. Like you said, you just book the meeting, then you're on to the next. You book a meeting, you're on to the next. You never really get to see that to come to fruition. You never get to see like the whole thing. And so it's like, I can see how that can contribute to burnout, and how, critics might leverage that and say, this is an example of why, hustle culture is damaging, because it's just using these people up. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I think there's also a shift in, I've heard this. Now, this is not my word, so please, but I've heard this, that, a lot of women come into sales and they have a different approach that doesn't align with the traditional kind of like aggressive, masculine approach to sales. And so they bring a different approach, and they, because there's a lot more women in sales than there used to be, we're starting to see this in action. We're starting to see this work where you don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to hustle. You just have to, be there and be helpful, and you get results. Right. And what I heard was in a gender conversation, but it's not necessarily a gender thing. It might also be, an age thing, younger people coming into the culture and saying, I don't want to work 15 hours a day. I want to work 6 or 8 or whatever. And like, there's all these different conversations where we're getting diversity in the workforce that people are starting to question, is this the way to go?
Well, it's just like fine wine. It gets better with taste over the years. And once you hone your sales process, you can be pleasantly persistent. You start to work smarter, not harder, right? I know a lot of great reps that can come in and work 2 hours and get the same amount of, points on the board that somebody that spends the whole 8 hours. It's just like in sports. I mean, it happens all the time in some of the competitions in gymnastics. Some girl can come out, do one routine, score a perfect score, but the same girl who spent the same amount of time and even more gets a 4. Right. And it's just because this other girl's learned so much about her talent and her strengths that she plays to them and works smarter. Just like in UFC, those fighters have learned to hone their process and work a lot smarter than reaching that burnout. And guess what? There's still some of the baddest mofos out there that will kick ass just like a hustler would. Right. But again, it's not always about numbers. I think Dale Dupree's been talking about it. I think a lot of our friends in our network have been speaking about it, is that it's not a numbers game here anymore. It's about being, really targeted, very persistent in a pleasant way, and really just driving hard at 100%, but in a different 100% than what we were accustomed to for the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really like where this is going. I like this shift in mindset. I like this focus where, even though we're still encouraged to hustle and work our butts off, we're doing it in a smarter way, that with more intention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're being more intentional about what we're doing. We're not trying to sell to everybody in the market. We're selling to our ideal customer profile. Right. Yeah. We're not talking to everybody in the company. We're talking to specific people that either influence or make the purchasing decision, right? Like, we're really honing our craft in every single way. And just like the older guys on my recreational hockey team, like, they are intentional with their movements. They're positioned better than the younger guys. Then they watch the younger guys skate circles around them, and they don't care because they have the stick in the way right when they need to.
Right? They're just sitting there waiting, right? Like, they just get better with their traps. They get better with their process. It's just so crazy that we all just come into this like, we've got to just work harder than everybody all the time to get anywhere. And it's all based on, if gosh forbid you're the 9 to 5 coming in at 9 and leaving the door at the dot on 5, that you're not bought into the vision, right? You're not bought in with the culture. And it's like, why would you do that to somebody? Why bully somebody like that with that kind of messaging? If you're leaving on time and just doing, your 8 hours, that's a bad thing. It's a matter of what you're doing in that 8 hours and your intent behind it. And like I said, there's some SDRs and AEs that can do their job in 4 hours versus a full 12-hour day like some, right? And that hustle is different. And in the beginning, you might have to work a little bit harder just so you can better your craft, right? But that's not pushing yourself till you can't breathe no more or you're crashing your body. It just means being intentful, reading articles that are actually going to help you, really putting your time and effort into extra things that are going to impact your job and your role to make you successful, to where you can hone your craft so well that, hey, I might have to do 60-hour work weeks now, but I don't have to do that in 6 months, right? There's ways to balance it and pull the levers of hustle, smart hustle, and no hustle. And I think that's a great place for us to kind of talk about, as you mentioned in the beginning, right, of these levers. So how do you gauge those levels, right? How do we get into that blend of, okay, new role, I'm stepping in, I got to hustle, I got to prove myself, versus, 6 months to a year later, I might be at a different scale, or even in the beginning, how do you not have to come in so hot and work these levers? What do you say to that? How do you gauge that?
Yeah, for sure. So realistically, you kind of mentioned it. There's 3 kind of components that you need to look at. You need to know when to hustle, when to not hustle at all, and when to use a blend of what we call the smart hustle, right? So when do you need to hustle? When you have a goal that needs to be met, when you are ambitious and you need to rock it and you need to crush your target, if you're behind, if there's a huge opportunity, et cetera, that's when you hustle and you go after it and you don't quit until it's done. Okay. To no hustle, this is when you've gone hard hustle for a long time. You need to take time to recharge. This is where you don't think about hustle at all. You just sit back, you hang out with your family, you go to the gym, you take a vacation, whatever, and you disconnect so that when you come back, you can do it all over again and be at the top of your game. But the smart hustle, now this should be the majority of your time. This should take up 90% of your work experience, is where, as Tom said earlier, you know where to be persistent or pleasantly persistent, where you're doing a lot of good, smart work. You're putting in a little bit extra than others, but you're being intentional about what you're doing so that you're not wasting energy and you're getting the highest impact and return for what you're doing. So again, understand what the hustle is, know when to hustle, and leverage the hard hustle, the smart hustle, and the no hustle. So that's all we got for today. Thanks, everybody, and happy hunting. Bye. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fill the Funnel podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite platform, give us reviews, and tell all your friends about us. Till next time, happy hunting.